Welcome to another episode of V4Veganism. I am here with Michael Harren, and he is we're about to watch your animal show.
It's so hard to find my way home again. It's safer, isn't it?
You drink up too.
But before we talk about the show, I want to talk a little bit about you
Okay.
and your road to veganism. When, how, where, how did you discover that this was the path that you wanted to take?
Okay, I kind of had two rounds. When I was in my 20s, I always thought about animal rights, and there's an artist named Howard Jones. I don't know who remembers him from the 80s. You'll hear him in the pre-show music today. He's like an outspoken vegetarian and a synthesizer player. So I was a piano nerd kid, and I was like, oh, this guy is cool. So I learned about animal rights from him. And I was vegetarian probably about from I was 18, 19 years old, and I was doing animal rights stuff and protests. And then I started being an alcoholic instead. And I'm sober now. But like during that time period, I was like I gave up pretty much on everything. I mean, I'm making light of it, but it wasn't like, it's sort of a dark time.
Yeah.
But it was right at, there was a period where I was a really good friend of mine, and I was talking about having been sober for a few years and that type of thing. And she said, oh yeah, the only thing that hasn't gotten back to normal is you're not vegetarian. And it sort of like kind of filed away in the back of my head, because I was still like, I don't want to mess with that.
Yeah.
And then I do a podcast, and I guess probably 11 years, when I still lived in Houston, I went and interviewed these people that were protesting. I was really interviewing activists, and there were people protesting the Chinese consulate for importing dog and cat fur, for China exporting dog and cat fur. And I was interviewing them, and I was trying to be all like, oh yeah, I know about animal rights. I used to be an animal rights activist and a vegetarian. And they were like, used to be? What happened? Like, they all looked so shocked.
Yeah.
And I didn't have an answer. I was just like, and it's all on my podcast actually, because it's still up there. And so that sort of started me thinking like, so why aren't you vegan or vegetarian? And over the next couple of years, I finally did it. And it was just about 9 years ago that I went vegan. And yeah, that's kind of the long story in a nutshell.
Hey, but some of us have really long journeys, and
Yeah.
some people are able to go vegan overnight, which that amazes me. My journey was long as well.
It's my first weekend at Tamerlaine Farm. I'm here, and it's summer, and I'm hot, which I hate, but I'm here. Gabriel and Peter started this place a few years ago with 2 chickens, Yuri and Jupiter. And it must have been right, because since then it's become home to goats, ducks, pigs, a huge flock of chickens, and 2 dogs, Tonka and Lola. I've been thinking a lot about animals lately. Why they do what they do, and why we do what we do to them. I knew this was a place where they would be kept safe. From us. We like to use them, but not here.
So you did work at Tamerlaine Farms.
Yeah.
How did you discover the farm, and how did you know that that was something that you wanted to do, like take time out and go work there?
I had just finished my previous solo show that had nothing to do with animal rights. And I did a big Kickstarter, I made an album and a book based on it, and I had just wrapped up that whole project. And I was like, now what am I gonna do? And I went to Woodstock Sanctuary for their Thanksgiving event, and it was the year they announced that they were gonna move to this new location and there would be space for people to stay, and it hit me like, oh, this is what I could do. I could try to create an experience that I could then write about and make a show. So right around that time, I met Peter Nussbaum, who's one of the founders of Tamerlaine, on a vegan running team that I joined, and told him the idea, and he and his wife Gabriel were just totally into it, even though I was just like, I want to be an artist in residence for a year, and I have no idea what that means. And they were like, great, come and do that. So I would go for every month or so, I would try to visit like 3 or 4 days and just be a volunteer. And I would stay there and learn about the animals, and learn about taking care of them and their stories. And so the show is about my experience doing that, and sort of, you know, I'm a really sort of indoorsy person, so like I felt like that would be an interesting sort of story too, of like me suddenly outside, like in the sun, like shoveling chicken shit, like everything. So yeah, that's what the idea came from and what it became.
Cool. Were there any kind of incidents or animals that stood out to you, or things that happened that were kind of funny?
Yeah, like there were a lot of those things are in the show. Like there's a pig that I had a really, like there are two sides of the story. Like she came from a terrible situation where she lived with these hoarders, and she lived in a bathroom, like a gigantic pig, for like several years. Oh, wow. So she's a little cranky, and she doesn't like when people stand close to her when she's eating, or like really anytime. So I was really timid and scared. The roosters scared me because they can be very aggressive. And so there were a lot of moments that I was just like, there was that one weekend in particular, there was one day that I was like, I'm done. Like the roosters attacked me, the little cute roosters, the little bantams attacked me, and then the pig bit me. There's a whole big show, like part of that in the show, where it's just like, the thing that was interesting, and the thing I kind of got out of that was like, they don't care that I'm vegan. Like that's about me just not being a dick. You know what I mean? Like, that, like, they don't owe me anything because I'm vegan, and they are in a, like, even at a sanctuary, they're in not an ideal situation, right? Like, they're in the best possible situation for food animals. But you know, it made me realize
humanity on this planet, they're in the best possible situation.
Right. But you know, it was really interesting. It was a cool ego experience for me to be like, I'm not special. Like, you know, like. I'm a human, they're roosters, this is what they do, and this is their space, so I need to adapt to them.
This place exists for them, and their safety, and their persons, and their names.
Are your band members vegan?
Yes. There's an entire string quartet, and every single member is vegan.
That's awesome. How did you find them?
So I met Brian. There are two Brians, both play violin. One of the Brians is vegan, and I met him through a friend who I can't even remember who I met him through. But then we were talking about doing this, and I said, hey, do you think we can assemble an all-vegan string quartet? And he said, on it. And now we have 4 vegan string players.
So have you taken this particular show on the road? This is a tour, actually. This whole thing is, So where are you going with the show?
I did the show here first at Dixon Place just over a year ago. And then last summer I took it on tour. So I went to Houston, Portland, Los Angeles, and one other place, Berkeley. And in between, I did more volunteering at sanctuaries, and I started learning about filming. So the show you're going to see tonight has some video that I took on the road. And so I'm going to Philly next week, and nothing else is planned yet. There are some little things out in the distance, probably in the spring and summer. I'm going to start working on an album and a book based on the show, like I did before. Awesome. So that's my next project. Once I get through Philly, I'm going to go start getting everything ready to make an album and put together a book and then start trying to tour some more.
Awesome. So you are going to major cities for the most part, and I know cities tend to be a little more progressive, but do you notice a difference between being in New York as opposed to being in Houston, as opposed to being in Portland, in terms of being open to your message?
Yes. It was really interesting. I did the show in Houston, and I was back to eating meat when I lived in Houston, back in the, not when I did the show, but
right.
like years ago.
Yeah.
So everybody I knew there knew me as a meat-eating pianist. So they didn't know me as my vegan, like, solo performer doing this thing that I do. And I was a little nervous because a lot of my friends from before were coming, and this show has a really strong vegan message. Like, I feel like it's very direct, but it's also like my perspective instead of trying to say what your perspective should be. It was really great. Like, they got it. Like, a lot of my friends were like, really loved the show. And there was one guy that still, I don't know if he's vegan, but he's definitely not eating meat anymore. Like, and there was one particular story about a rooster that I kind of tell the story of this rooster being bullied, and my sort of awareness of like, no, that's what being bullied is like for everyone.
Yeah.
Something about that story made him like not eating meat anymore. So
awesome.
Yeah, so there are great moments like that.
Yeah.
But it was different. It was like a different crowd, and there's not a huge vegan community there, but there's a lot of vegans.
So here in New York, is it mostly vegans that are coming to the show?
I think so. Like, I have like, I'm like, well, I have a few people that are not vegan, and some people that saw it before and came and saw it again who aren't vegan. Mm-hmm. I really want it to be appealing to everyone and be about my journey. Like, obviously, I would love for everyone to see the show and be like, we're vegan now, we're all vegan, like, we're not going to do this to animals anymore. But like, my realistic hope is that people will be able to understand my perspective, if nothing else, about why I'm vegan, mm-hmm. and sort of understand that animals want to live, like they're individuals.
Yeah. Well, I think that what you're doing is incredibly innovative, and it's something that's necessary. I think people are very much influenced through the medium of art, more so than sometimes they even mm-hmm. realize. And so the more that we kind of infiltrate this, the art with our message, I think the more it's going to make people, even if they're not like, fully aware, it's gone somewhere into their brain that maybe they can recall it, later. Creating art about animals and veganism is definitely important thing that we all kind of need to start doing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sitting
sure.
down and talking with us. We're so excited to see this show.
I'm excited you're here.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching, and please subscribe below. Please check out Michael Harren.